Okay, so we've finally reached the halfway point with this. So we'll drop this into the centre. Okay, and it slips in there pretty nicely. Now, you've got to remember which way this went back together. All right, so you had your pins. So we've got 3 pinholes, you can see. 1, 2, 3. All right, now the long pin goes on the one with the 1 hole because it's only held in by 1 pin, where the 2 short pinions have got a roll pin each holding them in place. Okay, now this is going to be a real balancing act. What you've got to do is you've got to get all your pins in, plus they've all got to be orientated in the right way for the roll pins to go through. If you get any of it out, it's not going to line up. And then you've got to get this on the top again and line up everything perfectly again. So it takes a little bit of stuffing around, but we've been here before and we know what we're doing. Maybe. Sometimes your punches and that can help guide things into place. Alright, so there's our pin. Get our glasses on before we go smacking anything. There's our soft hammer. Alright, so it's rotated the pin slightly, so what I'm going to do is put some side pressure on it as I hit it, and that will help line it up again. Alright. So some people will go with just the big pin through the centre. Personally, I think, well, the little pins are there to use, might as well use them. It'll just give you that little bit of extra insurance. Now, with these pins, it's careful to remember whichever way you're going to push your roll pins from, okay, you want to have this chamfered part towards that side. The side that you're going to push in from, you want the chamfered part, because the other side, notice, no chamfer. So you really want the chamfered side on the side that you're going to go from. So remember that when you're putting these pins in. Same again, chamfer to the top. Little helping hand to start. Okay, let's just make sure we're lined up. Maybe just a little bit of a turn. And again, perfect. Alright. Make sure our mating surfaces are clean and tidy. No crap in there. No crap on there. Now it's time to put this on, making sure to line up our 3 roll pin holes exactly. So it's probably a good idea to throw in some guides before you knock it together. Alright. There they are. Now it's time to knock our roll pins into place. Just give them a quick clean up. So we're past the halfway point now. Isn't that a bloody relief? Okay, time to knock the roll pins in. I'll start that one. Start him. Start him. Okay. Now it's time to knock them all the way in. Okay, there we are. The carrier is back together and mini-spooled. Now it's time to start adding some gears. Okay, so the next piece in our differential jigsaw puzzle are our gears. Okay, so I bought these off eBay. Cost me $170, I believe. Okay, so they're 3.89 gears. There we are, 3.89 to 1 ratio. Putting the gears on is pretty simple. It's not rocket science. Basically all you got to do is plonk it on like that, but you have to make sure that your bolt holes line up with the holes in the carrier. Okay, so this is actually slightly painful in that they don't always line up. Okay, so the best way I found to get the gear on the center was to get 2 bolts, get them lined up and get them threaded in by hand. Once you've got it to that stage, you can start winding them on slowly, just evenly. Alright, so you can get the gear on all the way. Okay, so we've got the 308 geared pinion out, and you can note that it's a fair bit bigger than the 389 one. Okay, so I should probably stress again that this isn't something you should do at home. Okay, so you know, putting a pinion gear in and setting up the lash and the tooth engagement and the preload on the bearings and that sort of thing, it's something that you need some specific tools for, right? I've got some of the tools here, but I don't have all the tools, so it's going to be a bit hit and miss, to be honest. But because we're only using this for drag racing and it's not going to be a street car as such, and because we've got $0 in the budget, well, I've got to do it myself, okay? But typically I would say go to a diff specialist and get them to put the gears in for you, you know. Even if you got it up to this stage and just said, okay, here it is, it's all ready, put it in for me, that'd probably be a good thing to do, okay? All right, having said all that, let's get into the car and stick this in. Hopefully it's all going to work. Okay, so we've hit our first major snag. Don't know if you really can see on that video, but this is the pinion that came out of the car, the 308 pinion. See, the bearing here is quite a bit larger than the bearing here. Now they told me the bearing on the EL Falcon is supposed to be a small pinion bearing, but obviously it's larger. The changeover period was supposedly AU, but I think they must have snuck some into the late ELs. Alright, so what we're going to have to do is pull the pinion bearing off this, and I've bought this brand new one, and we'll whack that on instead. We'll see how we go. This is going to be interesting. Okay, so to remove the bearing off this pinion, we're going to have to use this bearing separator and the hydraulic press. Okay, so as with anything, when you're working with things under pressure, and that includes hydraulic pressure, use your safety glasses, okay, because you certainly don't want one of these bearing pieces to go spearing off into your eye. Okay, so we'll get the bearing separator on there and we'll start pushing. Alright, so the bearing separator goes around the bearing, obviously, and in between the bearing and the teeth of the gear. And so we just apply some pressure to the end. I don't know if you can see that, but that's actually moving. Alright, so we've got pushing just on the end of the pinion gently, and that's just pushing through the bearing, and it's coming off quite nicely. There we go. And there she is. One pinion, no bearing. The other side of the equation's even easier, putting the bearing back on. So we flip our bearing separator over, so we've got the flat side, and yeah, we'll just apply pressure to the top of the pinion, and that should push the pinion down onto the bearing, and we just push it down until it seats. Okay, don't go overboard. Don't tighten your bearing separator around the shaft too tightly. It should be just a little bit loose, right? And yeah, should be pretty easy. That's it. One new bearing and no damage. Okay, so there we are with the new bearing. It's right to go. So we'll put the bearing cup in the housing, and we'll see how we go with our pinion length and preload and all that sort of stuff. It's going to be a bit interesting. As I said before, it's really a job for the professionals, but in this case, you know, it's 13s for 1300, so trying to save pennies where we can. Yeah, let's have a go ourselves and see how we go. You know, if at the end of the day it's just for drag diff, so it doesn't have to be 100%. We'll see how we go. Let's get into it. Hey guys, so we've finally got the diff all back together, and to be honest, it's been a real nightmare. Okay, so getting that pinion preload and the depth right is just, you know, really not something that it's easy to do at home in the garage, alright? So my advice is leave it up to professionals, okay? You can do the mini spool at home yourself, that was pretty easy, but you know, getting those gears right has just been a real horror story from start to finish, okay? So anyway, it's back together though, and it is running. I guess the only thing left now is to test it. How do you reckon we should go about that?